Day 36 of the Quarantine Reviews. Is now the time? Polysics seems to think so.
Got a considerably different one for you this time around. This is a band I've been meaning to cover for a while, using an album that's been out quite a while. This actually dates back to 2005, although the UK copy came out in 2006. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Polysics, they're a Japanese new wave / rock band who describe their style as Technicolour Pogo Punk, which I feel is very apt to describe how bouncy and fun their music is. If you're wondering about the name, it comes from a brand of synthesizer called the Korg Polysics, which I feel like they probably utilise quite a bit. They're definitely using a lot of the sounds blending a lot of the sounds of synth pop and punk rock. They're definitely drawing a lot of influences from bands like Devo on the stateside and Yellow Magic Orchestra from Japan. Now, what's quite heartening for me to listen to this album is knowing that they don't just sing in Japanese, they also sing in English and apparently gibberish. And as some people may know, I am perfectly fine with listening to an album that's entirely in gibberish. Now, the interesting thing about this album is there are 3 versions of it. Depending on whether you get the Japanese, US or UK versions, that actually affects a couple of things with the track listing. One, on each version there are different exclusive songs. For another, some of the track listing changes significantly. So, for example, on this version, the exclusive tracks are Metal Coconuts and Rain Rain Rain. One of my friends commented on how it's quite funny that the UK exclusive includes Rain Rain Rain. But also, aside from that fact, is that on the UK version, the song Toisu comes before either of the exclusive tracks, whereas on the Japanese and US versions it comes between the exclusive tracks. The other thing is, Baby Bias is 4 tracks earlier on this version. And lastly, the song Tay 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 is nowhere to be seen on the UK version. Normally, on the other 2 versions, Tay 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 is what opens the album, whereas on the UK version, it's Coelacanth is Android. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Due to the nature of how this album has been released, I won't be including the exclusive tracks for consideration as the favourites or least favourites. However, I will be including them in the honourable mentions. I will potentially be doing a follow-up episode going into it more in depth, depending on whether or not I can get a hold of the US copy. But watch this space for that. So without further ado, let's get into it. So to begin with, we have Walkie Talkie. Now that is very much a sort of controlled chaos going on with the very cool interaction between the synth and guitars that feels very reminiscent of Dead Man's Party era Oingo Boingo. It has that sort of weird synth effect mixed with off-kilter rhythms that was very common during that era of Oingo Boingo. You've also got the strange, manic, mad scientist type vocals that Danny Elfman would very regularly affect during that album. You also have this strange utilisation of wacky sort of laser sound effects and other sort of clockwork style things going on underlying the keys during the breakdown, and it really rounds out this sort of nutso kind of effect going on. By no means am I saying it's a bad thing that they're evoking a feel of boingo boingo. That's very much to their strength. What they've done is taken that sound and influenced it with others, especially from Devo and arguably bands like Mr. Bungle and Faith No More. It's that sort of breadth of strangeness and at the same time very fun accessibility going on. Next is Boy's Head. Now that's a cool funkadelic track with a nice rhythm, a very solid bass, and a good bouncy chorus that really got me bopping in my chair when I was listening to it. Yeah, I was doing a full-on chair dance every time I was listening to any of the tracks on this album, but Boy's Head really had me going. There's this fun drum beat that goes in tandem with the guitar work that really feels like they're having a bit of a game of who can make the other one lose their beat first. I really like how it's sort of interacting that way, and there's an interesting conversation going on there. And when it gets to the solo, it really lets loose, and you're imagining that they're just going, yeah, I can do this faster than you, or I can change the rhythm up more than you can. It really gives you this idea of a fun dynamic going on in the band. I have to say, this was the first track I actually went back to immediately after I listened to it, because I really wanted to have a bit more of a bounce before continuing with the rest of the album. And lastly is Jute. Now that very much feels like it encapsulates the idea of Technicolour Pogo Punk. It really blends perfectly that feel of synth pop and punk rock kind of styles, and delivers this interesting instrumentation and speed and attitude that I don't think I've really seen any other band do, or at least do as well as Polysics does here. It's definitely the sort of song that you can imagine being utilised for montages in films where someone's going around to various stores and buying everything up, or they're hitting loads of arcades, or any of that sort of imagery. And it just has this interesting sort of hyperkinetic feel, and constantly speeding up, slowing down, and alternating all over the place. It really feels like that's the sort of song that, if you were to use the description Technicolour Pogo Punk, that would be the sort of sound that someone might imagine. And lastly, the honourable mentions, which are the exclusive tracks. You've got Metal Coconuts, which very much takes cues from a lot of different genres. You've got sort of 50s jazz, second and third wave ska, a lot of prog rock influences, synth pop, and all melted into this amazing fusion of controlled insanity. It's kind of glorious to behold how so many disparate yet in some ways related genres can be just blended together in such an expert way. It's definitely one that I would heavily encourage people to look out for. I have to say, it would have been considered for one of my favourites if it wasn't an exclusive track. I really enjoy that one, just for how much you can dissect it and explore what their different influences have been, not just in terms of genre, but in terms of potential band influences. And the other exclusive we have is Rain Rain Rain. As my mate said, it's rather appropriate that that's on the UK version. That starts rather oddly in a sort of low octave keyboard play, and as it progresses gets more in a sort of demented circus-like style. It's very intriguing to listen to. It draws on a lot of synth pop effects, and it brings in a lot of sort of laser gun type effects, and it's this strange nutso song that I kind of love for it. Again, it would have been in the running for my favourites if not for being on the exclusive side. Now Is the Time is a great listen for anyone who likes their music on a slightly more experimental side, but wants something that's a bit more approachable and accessible and fun. It very much is the sort of album that you can listen to and just get into the mood of it, and it gives you that sort of, yeah, I want to listen to more of this. I actually had to exercise massive control not to listen to the other album of theirs I've got. It was one of those moments of, no, you need to just listen to this so you can maintain focus. At some point I'll probably review that one as well, because I had so much fun with this that I see no reason not to, and definitely got the time for it. Now Is the Time gets a 5 out of 5. I did consider giving it a 6 out of 5, but I felt that would be disingenuous considering the exclusivity of certain tracks. However, as I said, I'm probably going to be doing a follow-up episode discussing those exclusive tracks, so watch this. Now Is the Time gets a 5 out of 5. I did consider giving it a 6 out of 5, but that felt disingenuous considering the exclusivity of certain tracks. But as I said at the beginning, I'll possibly be doing a follow-up. Now Is the Time gets a 5 out of 5. I did consider giving it a 6 out of 5, but that felt disingenuous considering the exclusivity of certain tracks. But as I said at the beginning, I'll probably be doing a follow-up album discussing those exclusive tracks and seeing how my feelings are towards the different albums in terms of progression. So watch this space for that. That's it for this episode. Stay safe, stay healthy, and sooner or later we'll hopefully all be able to walkie talkie.